There we go. Welcome. We're plugging away here today. I have so much going on. It's so exciting. First off, I wanted to start just wondering how your week is going and if anything came up or if you are having any struggle with any of the steps of the process. We haven't gone through step 6. But that's what I'm going to be focusing on this coming week. And that's going to be a fun one. But if you had any questions with the other steps, or if you feel weak in one of them. You guys have this one mastered.
Could you hear me?
I can hear someone.
Yes, this is Sharon. I'm driving still. But can you briefly run through the steps again? One phrase, what each step is, that we're getting used to where we are.
You have to repeat it because some of it got cut out.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, I'm about 2 minutes from home.
Oh.
But if you wanted to briefly just run through those steps, like super quick,
Yes.
That would help trigger the memory of where I'm stuck.
So that's exactly what I was going to do. I wanted to see if you came up with your own glitches or your own see where you're weak in any of those steps first of all. But now let me show you how they actually work.
Yes.
Because having 5 children, I have 2 who are still active. One is very believing. She's very open-minded, but she believes. And the other one, I don't know if she believes, but she's certainly going to participate because she's in love with a man who is a believer. And so I got back really, really early Sunday from DC. It was the worst flight I'd ever experienced, but my daughters got up, and for my youngest graduation gift, they're going to go to Disneyland. So my husband got them tickets and hotel room, and they're going to have this fun day. But she was going to go with her sister and her boyfriend. And so they got up and got ready, and her sister dropped by. And they all got in the car, and then I heard another knock at the door. I thought they were gone. There's a knock at the door, and my daughter's boyfriend comes in and said, "Did you forget something?" I'm teasing him. I'm sitting there, and I'm in my pajamas, I have no bra on, so I feel a little bit like. So he goes, "Yes," and I could tell he's really uncomfortable and kind of nervous, and he says, I just want to let you know that I'm going to ask Lyric to marry me when we're up in California at Disneyland." And I said, "Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so excited for you. You guys are a great couple, and I'm so happy to have you be part of the family. I would give you a great big hug right now, but I don't have a bra on." He just knows that this is me. I'm just going to say it like it is. And so that he just barely had enough time to say that before it would be obvious that there was something going on. He just kind of didn't want Lyric to know. So they drove off, and of course I get this flood of stuff come up for me because I started thinking about a wedding, and I start thinking about that day, and I know that they're planning on getting married in the temple. And so I'm getting triggered here when I think all my faith crisis is over and I'm feeling so good and the church isn't bugging me and I don't care what comes through my feed. I just go, "Ah," and I understand the whole thing, the whole big picture, but then another 2x4 kind of smacks me upside the head. And so I get to put all of the steps into practice again and see if they work, which I know they do. It's just, are you going to implement them is the question. And so I go first to step 1, and that is a graceful grieving. And so the first thing I do is I figure out what it is I feel I'm losing. And I felt like I was losing that moment to watch my daughter across the altar and to be in her presence with the kiss, with her dress and her veil, and to see her and feel her nerves, and feel her heart beating. And all of it, it just even brings tears to me now. So I still have some processing to do, obviously, but so I feel like that's something that I lost. And so I observed the grieving, and it's denial, and like it's not going to happen. Like maybe I can convince them that they don't need to get married in the temple. And maybe I could do this. Maybe I could barter this, and so there's bargaining going on, or it's not really going to happen, or surely they could see how painful it was going to be for me and my husband. And, there's a lot of brothers and sisters that won't be able to go. And so I'm in denial that it's happened. And I go through the anger, and I'm angry because there's such a ridiculous policy that's so painful and cruel to families at a time when they should be celebrating one of the best days of someone's life. And so I'm just watching myself go through all these emotions, and then but that's when the bargaining hit. After the denial, the anger, and then the bargaining part was the part where I was like, how could it's like I watched myself get manipulative. Like, how could I convince them not to get married in the temple and get my way, because this is too painful. And so I'm watching myself going, no, you're making it about you, and you're going to, put some nasty stuff in there, and because you want to be there so bad, you're thinking of ways to get your way. And so as I'm observing myself more, I do go into that. I'm still in that depressive phase where I do feel, I feel discouraged. I'm going to be getting pictures before the end of the night of him on his knee. I don't know that it's even happened yet, but of him on his knee and her going, oh, and I should be just fully excited about this. And there's still a part of me that's just feels hurt. And so as I'm looking through that, it gives me a little bit of depression because I'm not able to express myself without hurting feelings. And so that kind of is watching my grieving, and the graceful part of it is just being in that place of allowing myself all those emotions and watching and observing my spiritual growth, and trading in that grief slips into the emotional nurturing. What is it I need? I need to be heard. So I'm going to find a way to be heard. I need to be, I feel like, I don't know, it's betrayal. You've taken away my opportunity. I'm the one that raised her. I should be able to be there at this day. I feel abandoned, like I'm at the temple doors are closed and I'm on the outside. So I feel all those, I feel denied access to my own children. I feel like her husband has been tricked. He just wants to do the good and right thing. He's a good kid. But I feel like he's been tricked, and that there might be consequences down the road if he has a faith crisis where he's going to feel bad that there's a lot of family that didn't get to see your wedding date, and it hurt. So I'm looking at what is it that I need, and the thing that I could come up with is I need to comfort myself in realizing that it's not a loss. I'm not losing anything. The thing that I have to do almost is switch the story around, and that's kind of in step 6. And here's the thing that I'm learning: all the steps go together, and they don't have to go in a synchronistic order. But all of them you have to kind of go through in order to be cleansed and clear of the crap you're going through at the time. And you can use this for faith crisis. You can use this for relationship stuff. You can use this for whatever you're going through, actually. But the feelings kind of show up in the chakras. After I've cleared out my chakras, I listen to my body, and I haven't really taught you this, but I listen to my body, and where does it hurt? It's all in my heart. My heart is hurting. And so I haven't taken the time to be still with myself and do the exercise of what is it you need and what is it that you're feeling. And I'm listening, and what can I do? So I still need to do that part. And and I can also, just by doing that, I know that there's going to be peace behind that. But there's another part in step 5 about clearing up the family hurts. And there is going to need to be a conversation to let them know that, yeah, it does hurt, but it's not their fault. And they should never have to make that choice. And I want them to know that I'm going to make that day about them and not about me. Mm-hmm. And so that all of that is cleared up, so that we're not going through that day and they're wondering how I'm doing. They know how I feel. And they're knowing that I'm showing up in my best form, and that I am going to be happy. I will be happy that day. I'm not going to let any of this affect me. I'm not going to let the church steal my joy and my happiness anymore. I'm in charge of that. So the envisioning part is using my what I call your spiritual organs to envision something different. And first of all, I noticed the meaning that I have put on observing that moment when your child exchanges rings and says, "I do." And I've since then read many stories about people who, my mom missed the wedding because the hairdresser was still doing her hair, and my mom missed the wedding because her flight was late. And I was like, and you know, there's worse things than missing your child's wedding. And so the good thing is I am going to be there that day, and I am going to do my part to make it an awesome day. And I'm going to enjoy every part of it. And it's probably going to be weird for some people because they're expecting me to be like this lonely, depressed mess. And I'm going to take care of myself and my needs so that they don't feel that or know that, because it's not going to be the reality. I'm not going to be depressed or upset. I'm taking care of that now. So I close my eyes and envision that day. Imagine we're going to get up early. I see myself at the temple. I can't figure out if it's going to be the Mesa Temple or the Gilbert Temple, so I can't really get a good picture in my mind. But either way, the doors are closed and I'm not inside. And maybe there'll be there's usually a lobby place, especially in Arizona, where you're going to melt if you don't have some place indoors to rest. And so I imagine who's going to be there. And I'm going to have my daughter, who will have already just had her brand new baby, or just about ready to pop. So her and her husband will be there, and my son will be there, and Richard will be there, and some other families will be there. Some of Mike's family is not members. And so I picture my grandkids running around, and I having conversations with them, and rejoicing that I'm in another party of people who just aren't allowed inside the gates, and helping them and comforting them if any of them are feeling excluded, and just, you know, celebrating with them. And then I see them coming out of the temple and being able to take pictures and give them hugs, and you know, I go through it with my imagination, but not just my imagination. I'm using my emotions too. So how am I going to choose to feel at this time when it happens?
Can I say something to you, Wendy?
Yeah.
I wish I wouldn't even have had a wedding, honestly. And I wish my mom hadn't been at my wedding. So I know you're a cool mom, but I'm saying weddings are overrated. It's just one day.
I know, right?
Got it, okay.
And that's the thing, is how
the
much,
rest of the memories.
it's so much meaning we've put into it. Just
so much.
Tons. Some people go and get married with Elvis in Las Vegas, you know.
I wish I would have done something like that, honestly, to, you know, put on a party for people that I didn't even want to be with,
Yeah.
or relatives that I can't stand.
Yeah.
I would honestly just rather have, gone and dealt with it with Elvis, or just, go through the drive-thru and say, I do, and we're out of here,
So,
don't
and that's
make a big
part
deal
of
out
the
of it.
process is realizing all the meaning we put on it. No, it doesn't. It only means what I think it means. And so I just need to make it mean something else. The truth of the matter is they're going to be married and they're going to start a family and they're going to,
Yeah.
and he's part of the family and that's all good. And so,
Can I
It's the only
mention
thing that
something?
matters.
I've been married 33 years. My husband's from Germany. He was a convert to the church. And so his parents came clear from Germany. I knew they were coming. It was a surprise to him. But all that way, they still couldn't see their son because they're not LDS. And I didn't think about that or worry about that. And I wonder what she went through. And then years later, I go through the faith crisis. And I think, it's just a different perspective I have on it now because I didn't even have a clue that was even a big, I felt bad, I'm sure.
yeah.
You get through it, I know. So I feel bad now, which your daughter might feel bad down the road. You just don't know what's going to happen. But
Yeah.
it's tough. I feel for you because it's hard. And here I felt bad. My daughter got married at Lakai here in Salt Lake. Beautiful, beautiful pictures. But then I'm thinking, oh yeah, everyone's judging us because she has this beautiful dress showing her shoulders, not getting married in the temple, and you know what I mean? All those thoughts that go in your head. Now I could care less. But then I was thinking, I was feeling shame, because she wasn't getting married in the temple. So yeah, it's never perfect for sure.
Yeah. Well, and what if it always is, though? What if whatever is happening is perfect?
What is what, yeah. True.
Oh, Gina, you're showing us your underneath.
Something happened.
You just press the, where is it? Oh, you found it. Okay. What's happening? So that's part of that whole process is being able to see it in a whole different way.
Yeah.
And here's another thing too. I mean, would you really want to be inside the temple at this point?
It would feel weird, different.
Well, yeah, it would be triggering. It would be triggering. And it's not so much that I want to be in the temple. It's just, I feel like something stolen from me, and so I have to see that in a different way. And I want to feel her emotions. I'm an emotional person. I want to feel all the excitement and all the love, and I want to see the tears. I mean, it's just a thing for me. I just think it's so beautiful, and knowing that my sister-in-law is going to be the one doing all that kind of ticks me off too, because I mean, that's my job. So I just have to rewrite it all and learn how to be bigger, because I'm waking up and cleaning up and growing up and showing up. And this is why when you have this faith crisis, it's literally forcing you to expand your vision to see multiple perspectives. So I posted on my Facebook just the other day that, 2 days ago, that I was going to be more authentic, and basically it was an invitation for anybody who's on my Facebook feed who is a believer to expect some controversial things coming through, letting them know I don't mean to offend or hurt anybody, but that, and they can unfriend me. It's just kind of like a warning. And my brother, who never posts on anything or even acknowledges that he sees me on Facebook, decides to put a snarky remark about, oh, it's just a paradigm shift. And I'm sure if I was in that paradigm, I'd be needing your services too. And I was like, wow. So I wanted to post something snarky back, and I started to, and I posted something, and then I was like, oh, I didn't practice my steps. So I went through just like really fast and noticed the one that was really bothering me is that I need him to understand, or how dare he attack me. And then I did just the emotional healing really quick. And then I went in there realizing that he can't see, and it's making him nervous. And he loves me enough that he wants to participate in what I'm doing, or he wouldn't be posting anything. And it might be scary because I'm moving out of the family paradigm, and it's like making him really uncomfortable. And so rather than trying to meet my needs, I tried to meet his, but I also needed to honor everybody who was on my feed who was in the trauma. So I'm like, don't make me pick between my family and those people that I've come here to serve. I don't think that I need to pick that, but okay, that's what's happening right now. And so I just posted on there that it's those passive aggressive undertone comments that cause a lot of trauma in those who are going through faith crisis. And I know you're a good man, probably the best man, and I know you're probably not aware of these things, but just so you know, it hurts. And so something like that. Anyway.
I saw that.
That was so beautiful, Wendy. I did see the initial post,
and
I saw that you changed it.
Yeah, I'm like,
awesome.
okay, I'm in a bad place. I'm gonna kick your butt mood. And I was like, no, I'm not that person.
So did you post something and then change it?
I did.
Okay, I don't know if I saw the original because I thought it was pretty good what you said, and I was guessing that was your brother.
Yeah, he's my youngest brother.
Your youngest, yeah.
And
he's not the one that's in the stake presidency, is he?
He's in the ward. My oldest brother is in the stake presidency. He's in the bishopric.
Okay.
And he actually, his wife was Lutheran, and he took her through the discussions and all of that before they got married, and they had a wedding outside of the temple because she hadn't been a member for a year. And so she got this beautiful wedding, and then with a totally inappropriate top. It was a beautiful dress, but totally immodest. And so now she's in the church and very active, and they're believing and they're very into it, the whole thing. So he has too much to lose to even look outside that box. And when I got into his shoes, I realized it's scaring him because he wants to believe that I've just been reading negative things. And so I did comment back to him again, if you want to read it. I don't know if it's going to be helpful, but at least I'm having the first dialogue that brother has ever bothered to have with me. So it's really interesting.
That we're really good friends. I feel like, because they're like family, we've known for 30 plus years, that he's a former bishop, now he's teaching gospel doctrine. He would just, I see what you're saying, they'd have so much to lose.
Yeah.
But it's still, it was really hard because you do want to enlighten them. And of course, when they're not ready, they're not ready. And it doesn't mean they won't, because I know bishops that have come through this. And so it could happen someday, but I guess it's not our job. That's the hardest thing for me, is just realizing, well, it's not my job to help other people on their journey unless they're ready for, what I have to say.
Yeah, and that's knowing where your place is. So my place is I'm here to support and be a voice for those who are going through the crisis. So I do feel like, some of the things that he said are triggering, and I understand where they're triggering for a lot of people. And so I did call it out. I'm like, if you're on my Facebook,
respect. That's why.
And that's because that's what I do. But I wouldn't feel the need to stick up for anybody if we were having a private conversation. But I'm like, okay, if we're going to do this in public, then I'm going to stick up for the people who you're hurting right now, because that's who I serve.
The pure truth, yeah. I'll have to read it and see which one I read. I don't know. I'll have to check it out.
Oh, my family.
Really active discussion. I was following it for a while, and there was a hell of a lot of comments. Excuse me, heck of a lot of comments.
Well, the comments
version.
Yeah, so those are just some of the things that, and one of the things I told him is like he's frustrated because people who leave the church can't leave it alone. And so I did mention in there that Mormon faith crisis is a trauma that keeps on giving. Therefore, we cannot leave it alone.
I saw that comment. Yeah.
So that's kind of again, the things that pop through. I don't know how people expect us to just be so enlightened and mature and emotionally stable enough to hit the whammy or to deal with the whammies they deliver, because they honestly don't know what it feels like. And they
No.
expect us to be the strong one. And they're like, if I were to show up to my daughter's wedding all in a pouty mood and kind of all pissy and nasty and stuff, they would be like, what is her problem? You know, boy, she's gone down the wrong road. A testimony to us that we need to stay in the church, and just things like that. But if I show up all happy and joyful, then I could also get smacked with, you must not care about your daughter. And actually, it's just going to be weird for everyone that I show up happy. So I'm going to let them deal with that. I don't really care. But what I'm trying to explain is there's a transition that happens when you speak something, and sometimes you have the opportunity to retract it and take it back and replace it. Many times, once you've fired off the gun, there's no retrieving the bullet. But there's always this place where you can observe how you reacted and how you responded. And you can hear the emotional anxiety that's still going on in there. It will lift and it will get better. However, if you continue in the Mormon soup, you're just asking for bullets to be fired at you. So if you're continuing to read, feeds and be in podcasts and all of these things, you're putting your brain in that soup. That's what your focus is on. It's like whatever we focus on, that's what expands. And when we step into a place of victimhood, we actually start attracting other victims, and we start feeling like a victim in other areas of our life, and it becomes very toxic. And so that's why it's so important to move out of that and surround yourself in an environment where people are not bitter and they're moving forward and they're finding ways to cope, and they're starting to focus. The whole thing is, we've been looking at here, imagine that this is the faith crisis behind us and we're in the middle of it. And now we have to turn our face completely and start focusing forward. Because what you focus on expands. It's like, yes, this did happen to you. It happened to you. You have been abused, and it's been traumatic and hurtful. And your goal is, how well can you just pull away from it so that you can face forward? Because the minute that you face forward and focus on the future that you want to create, the more it's going to start to form, because we are powerful creators. And anytime that we start to engage those spiritual organs toward something we're focusing on, and we add passion to it and excitement for it, then it's going to start formulating in our life. And if all we're doing is ruminating in this pond of woundedness, we're going to be sitting there for a really long time. And so that's why it's so important to see what is it you desire. What is it that pulls you in? What is it that turns you on? And where is it you want to be in 3 years? 3 years is a good, in my studies, people have said 5 years is like too long, too far to go out for us to gauge anything. It's hard for our brains to gauge where we can be in 5 years. We tend to overshoot, I think is what it is. But in 1 year, we tend to, it's a good place, a strategy to start there. But if you want to do the best kind of planning and preparing your future, it's a 3 year. Like, where will I be in 3 years? And you use your how old you will be, where you want to be. As a mom, I was always about, well, my kids are going to be this age, because that helped me understand kind of, are they going to be in junior high feeling going on in my life, or is there going to be a high school feeling going on in my life, or is there going to be a wedding and kids feeling going on in my life? but to project 3 years out where you want to be, who do you want to surround yourself with? What do you want to be doing? 3 years is plenty of time for you to get engaged in your profession, or any licensing, or any schooling, or any training that will help you move forward. And so engaging in those things is going to distract you from turning on a podcast that's going to send you back into the soup, into the wounded soup. And the more you're outside of that, the less the other stuff is going to hurt. Because it really, that time away from it gives you peace. And this is why it's so hard when you're in a relationship where some family members are still active, is because it's very hard for you to get to completely turn your face in the other direction and start moving forward. And some of the tricks about that is that you need to have those healthy boundaries in relationships. What I realized is, if you're in a relationship with a spouse specifically, where you cannot express your doubts about something, or your disbelief about something, without there being emotional, it's okay for them to get emotional, but if they start getting attacking and emotional at you, that's a clear red flag that you're in an unhealthy situation. Not so much that the people are unhealthy, but the paradigm is unhealthy, and the person is too enmeshed in the paradigm for you to have a healthy conversation. Does that make sense? So those of you, I think all of you are in a situation where your spouse is not so much antagonistic, but what was some of that transition? If you could please explain what you noticed, if you were the one that kind of started to wake up first and it was hard to speak to your spouse, what were some of the things that you noticed as you went to share with them some of your fears and doubts? Like, how long did you withhold the information, or maybe you didn't at all? Or when you spoke to them, what were you being careful not to trigger? If you could please share.
I'll share real quick. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick, and so in my relationship, I withheld information. I was the first one, and I withheld information for quite a while. And I remember one day I just burst with all this information, and he was really taken back and in shock, and it really threw a wrench in our marriage. And then over time, things improved because he kind of decided that he needed to find out for himself. And but now we have a really good relationship with everything, but we still cannot talk about religion. It really triggers both of us, and he gets highly emotional about it. So we're not at that healthy point yet. So when you said an unhealthy relationship, I'm kind of in that still when it comes specifically to Mormonism and religion. So that's kind of a problem for us.
So do you feel like you can have the conversation where you can honor that it's scary, and maybe you have had that conversation where you can honor that it's scary for him, but that it's also doesn't feel healthy for you to withhold how you're feeling either, that it's more important for you to be really honest and open and vulnerable with each other than it is for the church to be true?
It's taken some time. We've had those conversations to where it's mostly me being vulnerable. Communication is really difficult for him. His whole family is that way. He never had a good example of how to communicate. So it's been just difficult for him to express himself as well. We still need a lot of work. We just need a lot of work in that department. It's slowly getting a little bit better, but we just try just for me, I know I can't say much. I just don't want contention, so I don't bring things up most of the time, unfortunately. But there's times where I've suppressed it so much that I just say something just because I have to, and then that's when we can have some sort of conversation. But sometimes it can get really emotional, and it can cause a rift for a few days. You know, there's some, it gets uncomfortable for a few days. Does that make sense? And then we just kind of ignore it for a while, and then it's kind of an up and down thing. Yeah, it's something, it has gotten better over time, but we still need a lot of work. But you know, he's taken a break too from the church, and about the same amount as I have, but I think he's still really ingrained in that paradigm you were talking about, where he gets really triggered and emotional about it. So I don't know. That's just a really hard area for us right now, our relationship. So, but everything else seems to be great. I mean, we've gotten closer in other areas, but just that bringing up Mormonism.
So noticing the pattern and calling it out and just describing it maybe to him is that, and just letting him know. I mean, being completely open. Most people have such a hard time. Most people, I certainly have, but have a hard time just calling it as it is, and they can explain it, what's happening to other people, but it's hard for them to explain it to the spouse. But even if you just talk to him in a way that describing the pattern, that, and tell him, I'm withholding or suppressing some information from you because I want to avoid having a contentious argument. But when I withhold so much, it causes an outburst, and then I say things, and it's not healthy. And then saying, what can we do to strengthen this? Because I don't want to hurt your feelings, and I don't want to withhold information, because neither one of those things are healthy or are helping us. And say, what can we do? You know, what can I do? Because I know withholding or suppressing is not healthy for us. What might work for me is if you can, is there any way that you can create more safety for me to talk about these things so that I don't feel like I have to withhold? Or what can we do so that you feel safe talking about these things? And just be willing to, realizing that even that conversation might trigger a 4-day silence.
Yeah,
Just
really does.
when you know what it's going to do, then you can expect it. And you have to say, is it going to be worth it to have this conversation? But it might be that 4 days is his cycle to understand something.
Ah, okay.
And so basically you can look at it a different way, in that if I explain this exactly how it's happening, I'm not accusing him of anything. I'm just explaining what I'm experiencing in our relationship. And then realize that when I explain something that heavy for him, because of his emotional acuity based on his bringing up or whatever, it will take him 4 days to process. So I'm not going to take it personally. I'm just going to let him have his space. And that way I'm not going to be getting all triggered thinking that he's doing something to me because he feels upset, because that's how I used to do. I'm like, I'm so upset, but he just needed to process.
Ah, gotcha.
Because some minds that they get it and they go, and I can't sit in a place where I don't have answers and solutions. So a lot of times in some conversations that Richard and I would have, I would just like push, and I'd be like, I have to know, until he was like trying to figure something out. I didn't realize that he just functioned differently and he needed his space, and I would take it personal, like, you can't run away from an argument, you know, just until then he was on top of me, just, and it's just kind of crazy. And I finally realized, oh, that's how long it takes for him to process something important. And this is important to me, and it's important for our relationship. If I give him 4 days without being put out or hurt or anything, he could probably come up with a very good plan.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, I think he does process things much slower, and he has mentioned something similar to that. And I just need to be patient because I'm like you. I'm like, come on, come on, come on. You know, I have all the answers now. I want the answers now, but I need to realize he's not. He doesn't think the way I think, and he needs more time.
Yeah.
I just need to be more patient for sure. That's just
Well, and realize why you need those answers fast too. For me, I needed them because I can't stand to be thinking that I'm hurting somebody else. But there has to be clarity. I can't let you be hurting, but for them, that's how it operates. So when I learned that about myself, I'm like, well, I just need space. And I have a couple kids that are like that too. And so I realized that I was just pushing and pushing, thinking I was doing the good and better thing. You need to get this healed and we need to get on the road. You don't want to feel like this forever. Come on, let's go.
right.
And reality is they actually need the space and they need the time, and I need to just step back and not take it personal and go find something else to do. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yes. That makes sense.
So hopefully that helps. How about Gina? Did you and your husband leave at the same time?
Pretty much. I discovered it first. We both were questioning things. But then when I found the letter and stuff, I was like, I'm like you. I make decisions like quick and want to move forward. And he needed more time. So he was probably about a month after me, 3 to 4 weeks after me. And he just had to process everything. But once he's seen all the evidence, he was done too. So, yeah, we pretty much were the same on that.
Well, that's good. That's good. And a lot of that has to do with your communication with each other and feeling safe to talk about, look what I came across, and not feeling like it's going to unravel someone's whole life. And it does have to do with how their family dynamics were, and how, if they're a family of secrecy, it could be very difficult for them to deal with anything. I just don't have the language for it. And so we have to honor that. And
yeah,
so there's all kinds of different ways of dealing with mixed faith situation. But I come up with some clients that are like, I just don't talk about it because I don't want to have that conversation, and they'll be arguing, and that's like a recipe for disaster in a relationship. Because if you talking about it doesn't set off some kind of rift in an already broken situation, being quiet about it for a long time certainly will. It has to come to the surface at some.
Our 17-year-old was the one that had the hardest time with it, and when I first told her I quit believing, she just ran off and went to her friend's house, and she didn't talk to me for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And it was a sore subject for a while. She kind of buckled down and was more active for a while, but then we decided to move because I just knew we were in a small town, and I knew that it would be hard to just start fresh. I don't know. It was like once we found out the church was true, wasn't true, everything changed. We just want to be out into a new town. And it's been good. And she slowly has quit going to church, and just, it hasn't been until this week that I can start talking to her more openly. And she's starting to see like the way Mormons treat people. She's starting to see things that she didn't see before. So I think she's coming around. And we just have to back off and give her space.
Yeah.
Not talk to her about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the natural conversations that happen in the family, they're listening to, just keeping open to them and letting them know that I'm okay whether you believe. I'll support you and I'll take you to church. That's why I told my girls, I'm like, I'll take you to church. I'll support you. In fact, even when they were older, the older ones, after we had left, I'm like, you need some friends, and we go to singles ward or something. Like, now hope I don't regret it, because that's where my daughter started, dating her fiance, probably by now. So yeah, there's just letting them go at their own pace and letting them know that you support them and that you trust their decisions is going to mean a lot, because they're going to respect. They're going to observe you, and they're just going to hear the natural conversations between you and your spouse, or you and your friends, or whatever. And those things will be in their mind, and it'll press upon them. And for those young kids, it's actually easier for them to slink out of it than it is when you've been in it for 40 years and you're dedicated your whole life, and you're
I know.
money and you're
because they're like, are you going to go meet with your angry ex-Mormon friends again? I mean, they think everything we do now revolves around the church or something, but I don't know. They like to make jokes. Because, yeah, I mean, they do. They just transition. It's like, well, my oldest son never believed, but he doesn't get it at all. But, yeah, I don't know. It's easier for kids, that's for sure.
Yeah, they don't have so much invested.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, there's. Anyone else have insight on mixed faith relationships?
You don't want to know my opinion, so we'll just skip on to the next person.
Oh, I do want to know your opinion.
We just don't talk about it.
Is he still active?
No, but he defends it to the last dying day, but he won't even wear his garments, and he won't even go to church. So there you go. We just don't even talk about it.
Well, sometimes you just got to agree to disagree. And yeah, and creating boundaries. I mean, if you're with a spouse that's talking so bad about something that's sacred to you, that is hurtful. And so you have to learn how to have those conversations without being condescending or bitter towards church, because it's still so sacred to them. But there's a way that you can have those conversations to where, this is just how it is, or this is what I read today, and what do you think about this? And this is what I was thinking. And that way it's not that dang church and those darn apostles and that dumb policy and this, that. And so what is the rule I heard today? When it's only when they feel compassion that they're willing to see a different side. If they don't feel the compassion, then that person is not going to be open. If I don't know if I don't feel I'm being heard, I'm not going to listen to your side of the story. And so it takes a while when you are feeling more healed and you're using allowing yourself to grieve and caring for your own emotions and understand where it is your boundaries have been crossed, then you'll notice when you're getting a little toxic in your conversation. Sometimes my husband and I we were having conversations and we were getting heated, not at each other, but we were like, yeah, and they did this, and yeah, they did that, and that church, and not church, and not really. It's like that. My other daughter was in the other room, and it was hurting her. So we have to watch all those things too. But isn't it interesting that when you're in the church, you think that you have all these gifts and all these insight, and you're so blessed, and you have something that other people just don't get and they don't understand. And then it's almost like once you leave, you're forced to develop these skills that cause you to be careful, considerate, hold more people's feelings at bay before you give your opinion. You're learning how to honor other people's perspectives. You're that growth is like stretching, and you're starting to realize, man, I'm gaining some skills that I would have never learned had I never left the church. I would have never been able to hold those many opinions at one time, and to be able to share something with wisdom without offending a whole room. I remember my fiery days of Mormondom, I could knock you on your feet with how passionate I was about the gospel, realizing now that I would just probably sound like an offensive tirade. And I get embarrassed thinking about how passionate and inconsiderate I was of everybody else's feelings because I felt entitled.
You feel entitled, and we were never taught to listen to one another. We were only taught to preach, you know?
Yeah.
And I've taken a step back and I've been gone. I've learned to listen to others and to appreciate their story and their path. And we don't learn that in Mormonism. And so, yeah, listening, I've noticed I'm a much better listener, much more understanding, much more compassionate. Yeah, and I noticed that with true blue Mormons, they just don't know how to listen. All they want to do is preach their testimony, how they feel. And that's kind of how my husband was when I first came out to him. I wanted to talk to him about it. I wanted him to understand and just to listen. And instead he turned around and do it into missionary mode, you know? And it's gotten better, obviously, but yeah, that's just something with Mormonism that I'm glad, you know, that I've noticed, and I've changed myself, and yeah, I'm a much better listener. So that I throw that in there.
That was awesome. It's like I want to make a blog on that point just right there, because one of the things my brother said is that he knows that he is a much better person because he's in the church and he could be outside the church. And I was like, yeah, that's some sick program they've put into you, thinking that you can't be a good person without the church.
And I think we're a better person, you know, and I made the mistake of saying that to one of my girlfriends, and she's like, oh, that is so sad. But she doesn't get that I was a good person in the church too, but your mind's expanded. So you really do have more love and more, you just grow, you listen more. And it's funny because when she talked about, you know, Mormons don't listen, I thought that is so true, because I mean, you know, me included, I guess. But my friend was telling her that at least you guys have all still included me, and you haven't shunned me. And she says, we haven't shunned you. We've never done that. And she goes on. I'm like, did you hear what I said? And she just kept going on and on about how
didn't even listen.
We've always included you. We've been inclusive. And I said, yeah, that's what I was saying. You have always been inclusive. I mean, you know, I had to like wait till she settled down, screaming all her things at me. And then she goes, oh, and then she was quiet, you know, but they just already kind of assume what you're going to say too. And when I was instantly on the defensive.
And when you're really strong in a paradigm too, somebody could say something and you think they said just the opposite.
Yes, that makes sense, because she just was, I thought she was listening, but I'm like, that's not what I said. Yeah.
It's the whole persecution complex.
Yes. The persecution complex causes us to think everyone's against us. And
yeah.
Yeah. So with that, I want to talk about, last week I talked about how now I don't have her name again. Surely I wrote it down. I could not find in my integral movement podcast. I looked and searched through them for hours. I couldn't find it. I think they've taken it down. But I was explaining about how you develop the ego and it comes to a certain place, and then you have kind of a rift and breaks down the ego. And when you tip a little bit more and toward the other side, that's when you have the existential crisis and you go into the what they call the dark night of the soul kind of thing. And I wanted to explain a little bit more about that. For more research, and I'll post some of these links up on the site. They're kind of long, but if you can replace them with other podcasts that you might be listening to. So it's Keegan's 5 Orders of Consciousness. You can find them in Joiner Leadership Agility, but that's more like for the business model, how they use it in a business model. That's another thing that they explain in this is until you get out into the workforce, there's a lot of skills that we don't know, we don't understand, and we as women have not been encouraged to go out into the workforce because our place is in the home. And the danger is, now I understand, you get out in the workforce and you expand your consciousness, and then you get all courageous and get a voice and you put our feet to the fire, and it gets scary. But another one is the Cook and Gruder integral that has more to do with Ken Wilber and spiral dynamics. So what I'm going to share with you is kind of like spiral dynamics. Spiral dynamics talks more about not just your individual consciousness as it grows, but also about community, how communities grow and develop. And the reason I wanted to explain this is because I want to show you at what point there's a gate. Like when you're LDS, it's like you can't get past that gate, because if you're going to continue believing in a one true church and we're the only ones kind of doctrine, you can't get past this level of consciousness to continue growing the ego to a healthy place. So the first level, I'll just go through them really fast, and I hope to make a chart that's more comprehensible and post it in the supplements. But the first one is the opportunist who's always looking out for themselves. And so it's like me against the world. And this is when people are very warmongering. It's all about me. They might have a lot of phobias, they might use drugs and rebellion, and they're having like a self-destructive phase or others destructive phase. And so in this place, religion serves an awesome it's a program for that kind of person to help reform them and get them into a place where they have to answer to something higher, and that's called the diplomat. So then we move into a diplomat stage, and that's an us versus them, and that becomes the pleasers and the conformers, and we need to work together kind of attitude. And if you aren't with us, you're against us kind of thing. And don't rock the boat. The focus is on loyalty and obedience, and your identity is with the group. So you have this group identity. You don't have your own identity. And it solved the problem with the opportunist who was only about me, but now it creates another problem in that you have no identity of your own. And so then it shifts into the expert, where you are different. You're noticing you're different. I don't really quite fit in here anymore. And that's the differentiation. You're starting to differentiate from the tribe. And you notice that you don't want any of their rules to define who you are. And that's kind of when we have our little faith crisis. We find out more about what we love, and rather than trying to conform. And that's when we go into that expert phase. So this is only like the second stage. We've already been just shoved, and that's the gate right there that we can't get past. We never get into the place of autonomy. And that is so imperative for our growth and development as a human being. And so that gets shut down. However, if you're a man and you go into the workforce, or now if you're a woman, but as women, we're not encouraged to go into the workforce. When I was having babies, we were told women come home. That was the message. Women come home, and you're shunned if you have a job and you're working outside the home. And I don't think that's going on as much anymore, but it certainly was when I started having children. But this expert of you're finding what you love, and you move into that, and you find a career. Men were able to do that and still stay in the diplomat. But women were just still stuck behind that diplomat, and they never moved into the expert. The next one after that expert, finding your passion and what it is you want to do in the world and what you love and what makes you unique, then we go into a place of achiever. And the achiever has big goals, big dreams, wants to make big difference, big impact into the world. That's when their view becomes expanded, and they're willing to experiment, and they have clear boundaries. They have emotional agility. They have the ability to see multiple perspectives. All of these things start to on board like you're a higher functioning human being. And then you move into a place of observer. And that's when you start observing why you do the things you do and why you think the way you think. And you develop this metacognitive ability to observe your thoughts and how your thoughts are affecting what you're seeing in the outside world. And recognizing that until then, you might have thought that this outside world is what's creating what's going on inside. But at this observer level, what our whole goal is to understand is that what's going on in here is a projection of what's going on out there. So if there's chaos going on out there and you're constantly in drama and dysfunction and pain and all kinds of emotional gunk, it's because the inside of you is not healed. It's not functioning. It's not operating in a place of joy. And when it does come into a place of joy and peace, then your external world begins to reflect that. So that's a total, it's a huge deal that I'm not being acted upon. I'm actually participating in what's going on in my life. And there's always a lesson going on. There's so many books out there now about being in the now and being present, and all of that is being the observer of your mind. And meditation is one of the tools that people use to be that way. And understanding things may or may not be the way I think they are. That is like huge. But you can see that thinking this thought that things might not be the way I think they are, that will shift you into what's called the individualist. And that's where that's where the thermometer right here is in the middle is where you're the observer. And the one step over is the individualist. And the individualist is when everything just deconstructs and everything falls apart. And there's no one way. There aren't any experts. Things may or may not be that way. Or what am I looking at anyway? And what's happening to me? And it's terrifying. And it makes you want to go back to the simplicity of the church and the gospel. And then at least I felt like I had a grasp on things because it's a terrifying feeling. And there's two ways you can go when you're in this individualist point of view where everything's falling apart. You can take the sentiment of a nihilist, like you're very cynical. Nothing ever matters anyway. Why do we even try? There is no God. This is all a waste of my time. And this cynical attitude, it actually is relieving the pain that comes from uncertainty. And so it just helps you to feel okay about this existential crisis that's happening. Why it doesn't matter anyway, and who cares? And so the second one that you can shift into in this individual mindset is begin to beat to the rhythm of your own drum and start to realize, okay, what do I want? Anything is possible. I guess if all of this is falling apart, how do I want to put it together again? And how do I want to see the world? And how do I want to reconstruct my second life, as Richard Rohr calls it in his book, Falling Upward? So then at that place, if we develop a healthy attitude and we don't get stuck at the nihilism, then we can move into the strategist. And the strategist, all their views, they're able to bring all the views to the table. They find value in everybody's view. There's no idea that your view is the best. They want to hear everybody's input because they find value in all of it. They can see multidimensionally. They can see the consequences of choices in the future. It's like they have a view of, okay, if we do this and this will happen. And so they're looking at strategies and trying to solve problems. And they know that they can't solve problems on their own. They need all voices, and they want all voices at the table. They have an extraordinary understanding, and they're not bound to their own story, and certainly don't think that their own story is special or anything other than their story that brought them to the place of where they are. So they're not bound to their story. Their story is not who they are. It's just what got them to that place of where they are. And in that place, you can slip into one of the higher states. Is called the magician. And the magician is one that's, there's no fear there. There's, they can see that this is all kind of an experiment in consciousness, and that we're all learning, and that we're all growing, and that we are eternal, and there's not going to be any death, and we don't have to fear separation, and we all are one. And in this place, you're not afraid to call a spade a spade. You're not afraid to talk about the elephant in the room. You're just going to say it. And people are going to get pissed off at you because they're trying to make their world so important. And so a lot of times that leaves you very lonely. But they can also develop an ability to help others see the bigger picture. So the reason I wanted to go through these is I wanted you to see how early on, if this is a spectrum and we're going clear to here, basically when we're born, we're all one. We don't know that we are not one with everybody until, we're a little bit older, like 6-7 months is when we first start to realize that the thing we're playing with is our toe, and mom has a toe over there, we're like, oh, we're not all one. Oh, but as we go through this, what happens on the other side is we're all one again. It's just that you've had this experience that has brought you to a place of a human consciousness and also compassion for this journey. But you're in a place of we're all in this together. So you can notice as our consciousness is expanding and we only get to like stage 2 and we have this threshold where we're not allowed to think outside the box, and it's kept us trapped. Our potential has been trapped behind this idea of it's us versus them. And our potential is trapped behind this idea that we must conform or we're going to die out there. And so this faith crisis, what happens though, is once you break free of something that you've been under that pressure for so long, you're going through all of them. And so you're trying to find your place. So you're going through the expert, and you're like, okay, so what is it I want to be good at? What do I love? I don't know. And I have big goals and I have big dreams, and I got to watch my brain, and I got to watch my thoughts, and wait a minute, none of this even matters. There's no God. You're just in this place of going everywhere. And so that's when
It looks like a fish flopping around.
Yeah. And a thermometer where you were supposed to just grow gradually, but because of all that energy being pent up and you're asking all those questions when you break through, it's just like.
That's how I feel right now. Yeah.
So that's why if you know these stages, there are things you can't just jump to the individualist. You can't just, or you're going to go to the nihilistic place because you're unhealthy. You're like, it doesn't matter. I can't deal with anything, and so I'm just going to get real cynical and angry because I can't deal with this uncertainty. If we don't go back and collect the value of the other stages before moving forward, it just creates a lot of disharmony, disruption in the body, and we're not able to cope. And so if we know that what's after this diplomat stage is the expert, that you are different and you're free to love what you love, and that it's time for you to find what your passion is. That's the next step. Just go there and start gathering. What is it that I love? What is it that I love that turns me on, that brings me joy, that I'm passionate about? What answer do I want to solve in the world? Or what pain or suffering do I want to solve in the world? And just go to that expert until you feel like you have enough wisdom in that or enough knowledge in that. Naturally, you're going to open up into an achiever where you see a bigger picture, and you see where you fit in the picture, and you see where your gifts fit in the picture, and you're able to move into that place And during all this time, you can incorporate the gifts of the observer and watch your mind and notice your mind and how you're thinking and observing how what you're thinking and feeling is interchanging with the world. Does that make sense? So if we're flopping everywhere, we've got to go back to here. It doesn't mean it's going to take forever to get back to that place or to get on the path of growth. It just means if we skip the development that we needed right after being a diplomat, being the pleaser and the conformer, then there's a lot of pieces that are going to be missing that are not going to help us move forward in life. And that's that expert stage in finding your passion and your joy and your bliss and your gifts and your talents and some of that can even be looking at your 3-year-old and what did that 3-year-old love? What were they fascinated in? What did they love to do? Was it animals? Was it music? And we talked about some of these things. So that is kind of what I wanted to explain is that faith crisis is, I wanted to say it was like a quickening, but it's not like a quickening. It's almost like someone's taken the top off of something that's hyper pressurized and it's blown up and now it's just scattered everywhere trying to collect itself, and it needs to be back into the expert until it gathers. And even as a diplomat, you might have gathered some expert skills. Doesn't mean you didn't go to school. It doesn't mean that you didn't. I mean, you can have a lot of development in the expert and still be a diplomat, if that makes sense. And so maybe once you break the diplomat and you break the church, you still are really, really developed in the expert. And you shift up into the observer. So that's why getting to this place of using the tools to manage your emotions when they come up is so key. And it's also why you've got to turn your faith this direction so you can focus on your expert. What is it that you love? And get busy on that thing. So what are your thoughts and your impressions on that? I want to hear.
I have a question about the flopping. Like I just feel like that because just trying to figure out what's true and what's not now. It's so confusing. and I'm afraid to trust. Like one thing I do know is there's God, but still with Christianity, there's black and white that I can't get past. And then there's just so many unresolved questions. And I don't know. I like me being a Mormon my whole life. You feel like you have to know the answers to everything, and I'm getting to where I'm okay not knowing. But I just feel like I need peace within myself. If that makes sense.
So if you're still like having all those questions, what are like some of the specific questions you have? Like, who is Jesus? Is that one that you really?
Yeah. Okay. So when I first came out, when I was kind of didn't believe in anything, and then I kind of started believing in Jesus again, and but then I started looking more into Christianity and where they say, if you don't accept Jesus, you're going to hell, and that's more black and white to me than Mormonism, and I don't like that. And as far as like the gays and transgender, I really think, I know they're born that way and I don't want to judge them. I don't think it's good to judge them for that. I'm not perfect, and I just feel like, to me, I just feel like what's more important is to love everybody. And then I worry that, like, you hear people say the Bible wasn't written down until years after Jesus died. And then, human nature, they, they make Jesus someone more than he was. I don't know. I mean, there's just so many questions. I like Jesus. I think he was a great person. But for me, I feel like I want to really feel solid in it. But then I'm like, but then if it's not, I just want to know the truth. I don't know. It was just a mess.
I get
Well-
what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I'm kind of in that position too. You know, it's just kind of all over the place. Not sure what
I
to
know.
do. But I'm kind of like thought about it. And you, Gina, said something. You said I think you just want to be a good human. You want to be a kind person. And I kind of came to a place where I'm like, okay, I'm just a humanist. That's what I believe, you know, and is there a God? Maybe, maybe not. And I'm kind of at a place where I'm okay with not knowing, like Gina, you said too, but the most important thing to me is just being kind and compassionate human being and, you know, accepting everyone for who they are. And so I kind of fallen into the path of a secular humanist, you know, I'm good with that. But yeah, you do have those, you know, flopping fish going on here and there all over the place still, but
See, and I think I'm where you are, but I do believe in God. I've had, you know, when I was 11, you mentioned your ayahuasca experience, Wendy. When I was 11, I had a dream that I felt that, like all-consuming love. And to me, I think that's God. And so I just want to know what God is, really. That's my question.
yeah.
So writing those things down and really being in the question and being clear about what the question is, it actually pulls information to you. So if you want to speed up the process of who is Jesus, where do I have a comfortable place with God, or what is God, or what do I want to believe about God right now? When you get really specific and write those questions down, your mind is already designed to bring solutions or resolution to you. It seeks resolution. But if you're not clear on what the questions are, you could be swimming for a long time. So it's good that you're in the questions. That's a perfect place to be. But the more you can, especially if you use your opposite hand, if you write down the questions, it even pulls it out of you even more specific about what is it I really want to know, because it forces you to access a whole different part of your consciousness. And so, like, who really was Jesus? And you'll be surprised. You might be listening to something or bump into a YouTube thing or just have an epiphany and have an idea, or things will start coming to you that will. And you've been using this all along, by the way. This is not something new. This is what we do. This is what you use to get out, to start your faith crisis altogether. And so now, because we're becoming conscious of it, but the questions are all over the place. So if the church isn't true, what's next? Who is Jesus? How do I feel comfortable about that? And read the story about how the story of Jesus came about, how all the other traditions are in relation to that. Try and understand if there's a God that required a human sacrifice for sin, and if that resonates with you. There's all kinds of
one of my questions that I can't resolve. Like, doesn't make sense.
But then you're like, if I totally drop Jesus, then what about all the principles? And he was a wise teacher, and he was teaching me about love, and he was teaching me about compassion, he was teaching me about service, he was teaching about all these other things. And so there are so many possibilities, but when you get really clear on the question, and you're just going to start pulling forth all kinds of information that it's called inner wisdom. But you're almost like opening a portal where those things can be shown to you. It's almost like a Google. If you were to use Google, you would put in a certain question and up would pop some articles and some videos and some images and some of this and that. It's the same thing with your mind. If you write down the questions and you be still and you just start observing your world, some of those solutions start to come in. But if you're never really clear on the questions, and you just start to feel like you're just untethered, and untethered is not the right word, because sometimes it feels, that's what it feels. That's what expanding your consciousness feels like, is you're untethered. It's almost like you've jumped off a cliff and you're falling and you're still falling and you're still falling, and you just start getting used to falling, and you're like, oh, okay, this is what it feels like to be alive. I'm just gathering information now. Instead of being so put out about falling, I can start looking at my world around me and start asking questions, and not be afraid that someday I might smash down on the ground that I didn't see coming. Hope that makes sense. So the clarity on the questions is a huge thing. I have there are a few things that have really helped me, and I will post them in supplements. So I'm putting down my supplements list. And that is listening to atheists, people who were born atheists, raised atheists, and then they have a story that turned them to have a different view. Most of them don't have a story about turning to Christianity or even religion, but they have an awakening that says there is some spiritual substance out there that's working in our behalf, that's amazing. And so whether it's a near-death experience, or the one that I love the best is Bruce Lipton. I don't know if any of you know who Bruce Lipton is. That's the one that I'll post. Yeah, Biology of Belief. And he was a scientist, and he studied cells and just the nature of cells. Totally atheist. He didn't believe in any kind of God or anything, and just had all kinds of downloads. And he realized how the cells are operating, and how our cells are being instructed by something. And he's like, how are they getting encoded? How are they getting this instruction? And he's like, it's coming from the person. And when I put these cells, this one person's cells, in another person's body, there's anarchy, because those cells don't belong to that person, and those cells have to start agreeing to obey the person whose body they're in. And so his whole story is fascinating. But what he explains is that he realizes that we're encoding the cells. We're telling them what to do. And this is, when I understood this, is how I even wrote the whole Healing Questions guide, is that the way our body is manifesting is according to how we are instructing it. It's just usually we're so unconscious about what we're instructing it to do, that we don't know how we're participating in our own sickness. So I'll post his, and only not because I'm trying to get you on board to a whole new dogma or anything, but because it's helped me to look at how people came to a spiritual place backwards. From the not believing anything into believing into a place of believing in a spiritual life, and how people who were enmeshed in dogma and religion and all that came into a place of a more resonant spiritual life. And what are the similarities in those two? It has been really helpful for me. Also listening to atheists like Sam Harris, and there's some others. And just feeling how I feel about what they're saying, and a lot of it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense about the destruction that religion has wreaked upon us. And then other things that they're saying, I'm like, that's so he's in the nihilistic place, or he's so cynical that he can't tune into what's spiritually going on. There is a spiritual world out there that we are participating in, that is, we are more involved in it than we realize. And people who have near-death experiences, I love to hear those stories because the continuity in those stories kind of gives me a picture of what the next life looks like. When they come back, one of the similarities in all of them is they no religion. If they were religion before, they drop their religion. Not because they hate the religion, but they see that it's not, is irrelevant. And another thing is they whatever they thought was important before they had their near-death experience, they realized was really not important at all. And that whatever we're putting meaning on and whatever we're so enmeshed with is just our soul trying to learn. So those are interesting things too. But just being in that place of wonder is okay. That's how people deal with this existential dilemma in the real world. The whole other 99% of the population that aren't Mormons. Well, I'm sure there's other religions that think they have it all figured out too. But when we really jump into the understanding that there's an existential dilemma, and I think it's Einstein that said the words that must never stop coming from our lips is God. Because he was fascinated with the universe, fascinated with this force of energy that's surrounding us and moving in our behalf. So those are good. It's good to have the questions because the questions pinpoint exactly what it is you want to draw in and understand. And that's becoming an expert in what it is you love. And noticing what your questions are. Are they, I had somebody tell me they're discovering what your purpose is either has to do with feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, or freeing the captive. And I thought about that. I'm like, is that just a religious thing? And I thought, no, wait a minute. No, I see that. There's also another one that I believe in, and that is bringing beauty and joy. Sometimes people that's why they exist, is just to bring us beauty and joy and entertainment and to help make it a little bit more exciting on this planet. But there's a million things that you can do. I've done Enneagram, I've done the energy types. All of these things help you understand who you are so that you can get really busy and passionate about your expertise and expand into the observer of the achiever, where you can make impact in the world, where you can see where you fit in making a difference. And that making a difference is going to fulfill you. They said that the true plan of happiness is realizing what you've come here to contribute and to be actively participating in that thing. And happiness is not a choice. That's whenever I see that, I just about want to have an aneurysm. But happiness is not a choice, it's a skill. It's a difficult skill. You do have to choose to move into that skill, yes, but it's not just a choice that you can make like that. We have to learn how to develop fulfillment and happiness inside of us. And that's what the whole big question has always been. It's the one thing Joseph Smith was asking when he went to the Grove is, what church is true? Where am I going? What's going to make me happy? Oh, here's the plan of happiness. Here's the plan of salvation. This is what he got with the limited knowledge that he had. And he sold it to other people, and we all drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. So my whole point in this and explaining this is helping you to see the importance of recognizing your passion and moving into that as part of that facing forward and leaving the soup behind. It's a gradual thing. It's not something, it's like, I imagine it's like trying to quit smoking, and which is kind of funny because you can literally get addicted to your faith crisis. Because there are certain chemicals in the brain that fire up when we are looking for validation, or when we're angry, or all the things that we start to feel when we're listening to podcasts that have to do with faith crisis. They stir up emotion in us that releases certain chemicals that we can get addicted to, literally chemically addicted to our faith crisis. like we can't stop. And so it's a lot, turning the other way and just starting to face forward can feel a lot like to stop smoking, stop drinking, some heavy addiction, and letting go of that old paradigm and realizing that that chemical imbalance is going to have to be replaced by something a little bit more healthy, and that can be in you pursuing your passion. Hope that makes sense. Any questions?
When do you know to when do you know to turn forward to look for your passion? Just like always, and then I don't know. When do you know to move on?
It's a question you're going to have to ask yourself is, do I feel a little addicted to my faith crisis? How much time am I spending on this? And is the time I'm spending on this giving me the answers that I'm looking for, or is it just validating my frustration and making me feel like someone else is going through the same pain as I am? And, you know, it's really getting clear as to why you're doing what you're doing. If someone's going to listen to the whole year of polygamy, so either you're doing that because you have an addiction going on, or because you're really fascinated with polygamy and you want to start practicing it, or maybe there's something about the learning about people's situations that might lead you into wanting to be a psychologist or a life coach or something. Maybe there's something there that you can see as beneficial, or maybe you're just addicted to the podcasts.
I don't really listen to a whole lot of Mormon stuff anymore. I've just been trying to figure, like, I love the Oprah Super Soul. I've been listening to all of those. And then I've been listening to Martha Beck. I've been listening to her audio book about leading the saints. And then I want to read her book about her son that had Down syndrome. Because I think it's kind of similar. I think it was like with her son, she felt spiritual experiences. And it was with my son that kind of led me out of the church too. So I'm just trying to figure out, you know, other people's spiritual experiences to try to move forward, I guess.
To find the similarities and the continuity in there.
Yeah.
No, I think that's good. I think for me, a lot of the reason I listen to so many podcasts, part of it I had to be serious and say, okay, that hour that I just spent, was it useful? What did I learn? Or was I just validating myself? And my thing is that I wanted to learn the ins and outs, the intricacies, the how to get out of this. I want out of this maze, and I want to be able to blaze a trail out of it. And so I wanted to see all the angles of it. But yeah, there's times where I'm like, I certainly do not need to be listening to this one again. And people are just bitter, and I don't need to be in this place right now. It might be serving them, but I know better. I'm wasting my time. And it sounds like you're going more into that spiritual place of just the meditation and the
yeah, and I listened to Deepak Chopra's with Oprah, and that was fascinating. I would like to figure out how to meditate better. But I guess it takes practice.
Yeah, it does. It takes a lot of practice.
Yeah.
The daily practice, and people do it in different ways, but meditation is an important part of waking up. And waking up is just such a gradual thing. Mm-hmm. When I was doing my training in Washington, D.C., there's 20 of us in the room, and we're all writing a book with the hope to make a difference. And we don't really know much about each other yet. But as we start to have lunch with these people, I'm like, these people feel like my people. I'm like, what in the world? And then after the 3 days, we went to have dinner at this Turkish restaurant, and we sat in a circle. There were eight of us women. We started having a conversation, and before you knew it, we knew some other language among us, that every one of us were on some different plane, that anyone outside of where we were eating could listen and go, what the heck are they talking about? We were talking about aliens. We were talking about past lives. We were talking about the craziest thing, but all 8 of us were like on the same place. And then finally I'm like, ladies, we're talking about aliens, as if they're like our friends, and they're all laughing. I'm like, something's not right here. All 8 of us are on the same page, and they're like, yeah, when does this ever happen? But what happens is you start to find that you do have a tribe somewhere else, and they're doing similar things. All these people were at a stage in their life where I'm ready to make impact. I have got some expertise under my feet, and I'm ready to make impact. And they were at that stage. And there's some things that have to do with your development that you can't miss before you get to that stage. Anybody who tries to write a book, or anyone who tries to be something huge in making a difference before they go through that expert phase, it's going to be a hard run. I mean, more power to you. That's actually when I've written some things and I get smacked in the face and go, oh gosh, I can't believe I even wrote that. But that's all part of learning. So the reason I was saying that is that there are people that are on your same wavelength, that are on a place of learning, and they're asking the same questions. And when you get, again, if you're on that pendulum, or not, it's not like a pendulum, it's more like a thermometer. I guess I forget what she called it, but it's kind of like a gauge. But when you're kind of in here and everything's possible, you're listening to things. I mean, you might listen to a tarot card reader that you would never touch before. They're all evil. And you're like, how are they doing what they're doing? How is that information coming through? And then you'll listen to something that's a little bit more academic, and you'll see ties in that. And you're going, this world is amazing. And you start to realize, I don't need to map on to anything other than what my heart is pulling me to. So the Heart Math Institute, if you've heard of that, they talk about how to know what your passion is. And when you make a decision, and this has kind of been manipulated for us in the church, but when you make a decision, the best thing to do before you make the decision is to check in and say, will the outcome of this decision bring me joy? And to tune in that way, so that you're using all your rational mind, but you're also tuning into, is it going to be fulfilling for me? That's the same if you're on a date, or you're with a person and you're like, is this person helping me grow? Am I expanding? Is it going to be joyful? And if you're constantly tuning into that, you're going to find your path. You're going to find your way through the gates. So hopefully that's helpful. You're at that stage where you're just asking all kinds of questions, and that's exactly where you're supposed to be.
Good.
Any questions or insight or anything on that? Is there a step in the process of healing that feels still like out there for you, or like, I'm not sure?
Out there.
My goal this week is to get the affirmations of each of the chakras so that you can actually print them on your printer and have those available if you're working on specific parts of your development. And I will put some supplements on there, like hopefully I can have time to make this chart here that I was talking about. This is my, you can't even see it, or I won't even try to show you, but it's how this monitor thing goes. They talk about this, the first, in first life, it's all about increasing in independence and in knowledge. And in second life, it's all about increasing inner dependence and maturity. So that's first life is increasing independence and knowledge, and second life is increasing inner dependence, depending on yourself, and then growing in maturity. So it goes from self-centric to group-centric to skill-centric, that's the expert, the skill-centric, to self-determining the path that you want to go on. And then that's when we reach into second life, where we hit the self-questioning. And many of you are in that questioning phase, as well as the skill-centric phase, especially women in the church. We kind of missed the skill-centric phase because we were told that just having children and being a mom was going to be our skill, was chosen for us. And then after that is the self-actualizing and the constructing and awareness that gets really deep and detailed in the other side. And I only know a few people that I listen to them, and sometimes the things that they say are just like making my head swirl. Ken Wilber is kind of one like that. I've been watching him for a long time, and I can just listen to him and his books forever, trying to get it to sink in, but it fascinates me. And then I hear something about how screwed up Ken Wilber is, and then I'm listening to that going, okay, what's wrong with Ken Wilber? What's going on with that? And so it's all about just learning and reasoning and thinking and being okay with where you are. There's no right and there's no wrong. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about morally. I'm talking about how things operate in the world. There's always a right and wrong morally, and that is kind of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Mm-hmm. And be kind and be loving and be supportive of other people's growth and create an environment of joy. And so to me, if you have those moral things going on, then you're free to just study, learn, grow, explore. That's why you're here.
I love that there's no like one answer. There's no like one thing we're looking for. In the church, it was like, I always look for that in other areas, because it's like, well, if there's one true recipe, one best nutritional supplement, or one best this, or one best that. And now it's like, there's just good stuff everywhere. Maybe this applies for me now, maybe this applies for somebody else. Maybe there's something more to add to it, and I don't have to make conclusions out of everything.
Yeah. It's like, because it could change any minute, and you become very fluid, and so instead of so static. And that's when in a church we become static and rigid about our beliefs. And when we're static like that, it's like the information can't flow because you have all the answers. And so when I wrote the Healing Questions Guide, there was something about getting answers for yourself that I wrote in there. And that is, when you have all the answers, wisdom cannot flow through you. Because you're not asking any questions because you think you have it all figured out. And so this certainty that the church provided us actually shut us down from gaining wisdom and knowledge, further light and knowledge. It's not the pathway to further light and knowledge. It actually closed that off. And so when we're able to release that, then we're in a place of asking questions. We realize that every time we come to a solid, static solution or conclusion, that no light can come through that. No more information can come through that if that's what you believe. And so it's kind of important that we go into a place of anything is possible, and things may not be as I have always imagined them. So anything that I can do to help you on your in your relationships or with your, I figured this going through the through this process is going to take me quite a bit longer. So I want to turn the time over to you now, to the bearing of testimony. So totally joking. Do you ever do that when you hear yourself saying something that reminds you of sometimes, Richard was saying something the other day that it's tasty to the touch or something, it's some temple words, and I was just laughing.
I have a question for you. I'm not the most positive person. I've always thought I was kind of just a realist, and a lot of people deem that as negative. And so, and with my transition, I'd had a hard time remaining positive and saying positive things. And I remember you saying, just make sure you tell yourself to be patient with yourself and tell yourself that you love yourself. And I've been trying to work on that. But is there other words of positivity that I could use, that you could share to help me out a little bit with the positive mindset?
So Sharon's gonna take off for right now. She's been trying to defy this and make a shortcut out of this one for a long time. Haven't you, Sharon? Caught you right when you're eating. But it literally is watching the dialogue that's going on and catching it, and also surrounding yourself, because what created that negativity was your environment. When we learn up until the age of 7, the way we learn is just by observation, and we're downloading it. After the age of 7, we learn it through repetition, and it gets ingrained in us. And so the way to reprogram that is going to be repetition. You have to catch it and repetitively reframe it to say, okay, what was that full thought that I was just thinking that was so toxic? And how could I reframe it and think of it in a place of expanded possibility, that it's not the way that I think it is. That was just my little negative self, my sweet little older negative self that's learning to change her ways. Obviously you want to, and that's the part of you that wants to. So it's your inner self that can, but so catching it, reframing it, sharing the possibility of it, rather than thinking it's the way that the only way it can be is the way you're thinking. But again, surrounding yourself with people who think positively, who think in the realm of possibilities, and to listen to music that raises your frequency. When I say that, it means like it makes you want to dance and be free and just start to move and be fluid and spontaneous and just for no reason kind of thing. I think that's going to be your key, is just, okay, I haven't done anything spontaneous all day. What am I going to do? I'm just going to dance to a song or whatever. That's kind of going to open up it interrupts your pattern of negativity, and it opens up. It's like cracks open. It interrupts the old neural pathway and gives it a jolt, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. That's funny you say that, because I listen to a lot of music, but a lot of it's kind of goes with my mood and doesn't raise my mood. It kind of just, I like to listen to a lot of heavier music, and so I think, that's funny you mentioned that. Like I said, so some more positive music would be good. Just taking a break, watching my environment that I'm surrounded in, and catching myself and reprogramming.
It takes practice. You can just say for a year, I'm going to be in this place of I'm going to just be really vigilant at it. And I'm just going to get this train going on another direction. And you'll see if you're really diligent at it, you can definitely interrupt it. And you'll look at yourself and go, man, I remember when I used to just be so, grumpy and so negative. And I think some of this, though, might have to do with your personality type. Have you ever taken the Enneagram?
No. Can you spell that? I can write it down. What is
Yes,
it?
it's ENNE
Okay.
A gram, GRAM.
Okay. Okay. No, I haven't taken that. Sounds interesting. Can you just do it online or is it specific to?
They have a free one online, and there's another one I think you pay like $12 for. It's a little more accurate.
Okay.
And my part of you, because I'm sensing that you have some kind of contempt against that analytical side, maybe because somebody told you that it wasn't helpful or right or good, and that you bought into some of that. But there's also probably, I'm okay with my analytical side.
Yeah.
But there has to be this, if it's part of your personality, it needs to come more into a place of, how can I develop my analytical side in a way that is joyful and helpful and harmonic?
Okay.
And so I'm not going to tell you what I think you are on the Enneagram. If any of you want to take the Enneagram and share your results on the Facebook page, that would be awesome, because I'll give you some information about your personality.
That'd be great. Yeah, because I get told a lot that I'm just negative. I need to be more positive, and I don't think I'm being negative. I think I'm just being realistic about things, But yeah, but I do need to work on the positive language towards myself as well. So
yeah. The dialogue that you're having with yourself, and activating the right brain, just doing something spontaneous, creative, for no reason, noticing beauty and just drinking it in, and just exaggerating beauty, exaggerating the cute things that your kids do. I went through a lot of this too, just because I'm constantly studying. I thirst for knowledge, and I'm always studying when I learn something. And so I developed these two lines right here. And you maybe not see them until.
I probably have those too.
I've been told it's my bitch face. I'm like, but I'm not angry. I'm not angry. It's just,
I get that all the time. People think I look angry, but I'm just thinking. My brain's just going, and I just, anyway.
Yeah, and that's how I am. I'm thinking, but I literally have to stop and just, people say smell the roses. And if you do stop and you do just notice, okay, well, there is a lot of beautiful things going on just this minute. And be still for a minute, and you can hear a bird chirping outside or a kid yelling down the street, and you just kind of get grounded, rather than I have to know more, I have to learn more, I have to know more, I have to learn more. You interrupt that pattern, so it brings more balance. There's nothing wrong with having that passion about knowledge and the skill to analyze things. Our world needs that. When you become a strategist, it's especially going to be helpful, but it'll be really difficult to become a strategist with a negative bias. So part of that the observer will be you observing your mind and going, okay, this isn't going to serve me if I'm always taking the darker path or the harder path, or what's wrong with this picture path, and look for what's right. It's literally turning the train around and trying to see all sides of the story so that you gain a multiple perspectives, and using both sides of the brain. Listening to binaural beats. Are you familiar with binaural beats?
No.
You can get on YouTube. They're all over the place. And there's binaural beats that'll help activate that right brain.
Okay.
And things like that will help. What I would say is you're probably on left brain overload.
I would say that too after listening to you last week as well, when we talked about left brain and right brain. So I think I've been that way for a long time. I have a daughter who's completely right-brained and stops to smell the flowers, and we just butt heads.
You're like, come on, we gotta get going.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I notice that, and I do get like, oh, I need to be more like my daughter, who can just enjoy her surroundings and her environment, and she takes it all in, and I don't. I just go. And so, yeah. So when you talked about that kind of hit the nail on the head there. So
Yeah, so even in the words, I need to be more like my daughter. Do you hear the contempt in there?
yeah,
Like, I need to be something other than myself.
yeah.
So how could you reframe that?
I could say I need to. My daughter is a great example of how to enjoy life.
I'm gonna join in.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And it's like you canceled. You canceled whatever damage you were doing to yourself before. You just canceled it out. And that's what the more you catch that, the faster you'll get at it, the more you'll just get really quick at it until now it's not an effort. But at first it's going to feel like, oh man, this is hard. And you just keep climbing through it until you literally have switched the gears of your brain. And you're going to have, the beauty of that is you'll have the analytical things. That's not ever going to be gone for you. You're always going to have this thirst for knowledge and the need to know. And that analytical, strategical mind is going to be on board, but now it's going to have, instead of the negative flair, it's going to have a positive flair to it. And that most of that is energy that you're directing toward yourself.
Okay.
And when you can practice that self-love and do the self-nurturing with just gentle kindness and just patience with yourself, then you'll reverse it.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yes.
Hopefully that helped.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Well, again, if you want to take the Enneagram and post it on our Facebook group, that's going to be a fun one. I'm going to be recording weeks. It's actually step 6, and I'll be talking about a lot of the spiritual organs, how to put them into action once you have faced the other direction. When I do talk about that, it's important that you know, again, even though you're facing in this direction, you're going to get smacked with a 2x4 here and there with the religion and the doctrine. And there is a way to totally pull away from it and move to a foreign land and disconnect from all your family members. And even if they're your children and your husband, and just go on a pilgrimage, I don't know. Most people, that's not an option for them. And so just know that as you put your face in the other direction, you're still going to get hit and you're going to have to come back, but hopefully you'll have the tools to say, okay, a graceful grieving, a little bit of forgiveness here, a little bit of what is it that I'm needing, self-nurturing, and come clear and create healthy boundaries with whoever the interchange was with, and then get back to your living. It's going to be okay. Good. Any final comments? Got a thumbs up from Sharon.
So I'm just super excited for you that you had this opportunity to be with your people at your writing course, or your writing people, and I'm just really happy for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
and you're rocking that top, by the way. It's really cute.
Oh, thanks. It's like a dress. My daughter works at a boutique, so she gets like really cheap dresses and stuff, and I'm like, and I think I'm having this rebellion about my shoulders. Like, if my shoulders aren't showing, it doesn't feel right for me. So it's like, it's summertime. Every time I have something on, I'm like, I always have to be showing my shoulders. I just like, it's my rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you. So I guess we will call it a night.
Okay.
And you ladies have a good night. I think I need to be doing another thing that would help you, Jill, is like some guided imagery. We'll post that too. So one of my goals is to clean up the whole whatever I've been teaching you so it's systematic. So when the next person goes through, they know the right video at the right time, and this guided imagery will help this, and this homework will help it, and then you'll have your affirmations at the right time. So hopefully you're getting the vision of what my class will finally look like, so that I can take someone through on the journey and it won't be so discombobulated, and hopefully I haven't messed you guys up too much. So take care. Have a good week. I love you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.